Hi everyone, welcome back to another video about filmmaking. In today's video, we're going to be discussing color grading, color correction, all shot on the Sony a7S III. I like to shoot in S-Log just because it gives me a more wider range of color to play around with. And this is all brought to us by Impressive Tony, who left a comment on my last video saying, I'd be curious to see your color grading process if you think you'd like to do more videos like this. Well, Impressive Tony, yes, I would absolutely love to do more videos like this. Editor Austin, you should probably take away from here. Okay, so we have everything here located in our Adobe Premiere Pro timeline, but before I get started, I do want to mention some things about Premiere Pro. The color grade that you apply to the overall look, Premiere Pro's rendering does something a little bit weird, and it changes the color a lot to almost make it look a little bit more flat. Something you're going to want to do is add a gamma protection LUT during the rendering process to get the color correction, the grade as well, as close as you can to what the final image is as to what you want it to be. So once you have your footage all in the timeline, you want to go ahead and pick out a frame. I've already done that here, so we're working with this guy, me, so you can tell I've shot this in log profile. Typically, I like to open up these to lumetri scopes. We have the vector scope YUV and the waveform Luma. I like to read this to make sure the skin tones are right and just to see like what the color is doing. And then over here, this is more so for me trying to get the correct exposures. And when discussing skin tone, you want it to be somewhere between 50, 60, 70-ish, around there. I'm typically pretty good around 70, maybe a little bit less. Everyone has different skin tones, so not everyone's going to have the same exact numbers. So before we get started, I'm gonna go ahead and isolate the skin using opacity. I'm gonna make a little mask just around the cheek, just to get the color and the exposure of the skin. Skin tones are about 60. I want to try to get it a little closer to 70, I think. I think that's typically where my skin tone looks the best. Then also, it looks like we're leaning a little bit more yellow, a little bit less red. I try to keep the color right here on the line, and you can kind of see it's just kind of leaning more yellow than anything else. So we're gonna go ahead and take care of these two things first. So to start, we're gonna focus over here and we're gonna raise that up with the exposure ever so slightly. I don't like boosting the exposure too much, but maybe around 0.5, that should work. We're getting there. And then maybe boosting up the whites ever so slightly. Yeah, about 10. I think that works fairly well for what we want. And then for changing the color here to be less yellow, we want to go over to curves, hue versus hue, and then use the color picker to pick out the skin tone. Boom. So my skin tone lies somewhere between here. We want to push that more towards red. So we're going to go up. So if I go all the way up, it's gonna go more towards magenta. If I go down, it's gonna go more towards the green. You don't wanna overdo it. This is more so just to get the finite base of things down. We can go ahead and go back and delete our mask. So we've got the exposure down, so the skin tones are accurate. Let's go ahead and turn that off and on, just to toggle, show you guys exactly what it looks like before and after. What I like to do is start out with basic correction. Some people like to start out with curves and like to make an S curve. I tend to do that last or somewhere in the middle of the process. Let's go ahead and make this pop a little bit with the shadows and the blacks. I typically crank these up pretty high, I would say. So about maybe there. And what I try to aim for is not too dark. So if we go like all the way, you lose detail in a lot of these places. So maybe around here-ish. I think that looks pretty good there. No matter what, you will be losing some sort of detail, unless if you're shooting on a very high-end expensive camera, like a cinema camera. So I think all of that looks good. I want to kind of bring down the highlights. I think my cheeks are a little too overexposed. So about maybe there, not too low. One other thing we can do is zoom in. I want to go ahead and find some whites in the image. Grab the white balance tool and just select the whites just to make sure that we're good. Okay, so it looks like I wasn't too far off with my white balance, my temperatures, my camera. It's just a little bump. So again, let's go ahead and toggle this off and on. So you can kind of see there's a little bit more dimension there with the darks on my face, the shadows. I stick out a lot more, a little bit more contrasty. Speaking of contrast, we can go ahead and throw a little bit of that on there. I don't typically go too heavy with this, but around anywhere between like 15, 25 is my max. I don't like overdoing it because then the video just starts to look a little bit more fake. But hey, every camera, it shoots differently, so go ahead and play with these to the best of your abilities. None of this should be taken too literally. Don't apply the exact same settings to what you're doing. This is all just kind of like an introductory into what and how these effects will mess with the visual looks of your image. And in creative, I like to mess with the saturation and the vibrance. The Sony, it can be cranked up a lot. So let's go ahead and mess with the saturation. Let's just boost it all the way. It's a little too much. You can see that we're losing some detail, especially in the background. I like to play around with this and aim it to about 135, 145. It gets the color pretty well, I would say. And you don't have to, exactly do it, each one specifically. You can have vibrance go up a little bit more or saturation down a little bit more. I think that looks actually pretty good. About right. Let's try just 40. We don't want to do it too much to where it's hurting the image. And while we're discussing more about colors with monitors, it's the real reason why I use the Lumetri scopes over here is because it gives me more of an accurate feed, more so than my monitor. They aren't color calibrated to the best of their ability. And then on top of that, they just don't have the right color accuracies. Those monitors, they cost you anywhere from a couple of grand to just, it's so expensive. That's why I like to say that a lot of this is mostly creativity. Going into this, playing around, getting an image that you like, and not making it just flat, but also not making it too trippy looking either. So again, turn off and on, off and on. I feel like I'm at the eye doctor right now. And then from here, I like to add a little bit of an S-curve, depending on how the overall image looks. And this is gonna be your typical S-curve, something a little bit like this. You can see it's literally just forming an S. This is a little too much in my opinion, so I like just to make it a little bit less. I don't like it to stick out too much. I kind of like that a lot. And then just something else you can add too if you want to add some more dimension to your video is a vignette. Again, you don't want to overdo it with this. I typically go for about -0.3, and then you can kind of see how the border of the video, it gets a little bit darker, kind of has more of attention to detail on the face. For YouTube or anything too simple, I would stop here, just because I like the natural look of the camera. I think it looks pretty darn good for what it is. But then again, you can go the step further and add a grade to it. You can also go into your curves and get some more fine details. So like, let's say I don't like how bright this jacket is. I can go in, choose the color of the jacket, and then I can drag that down just to darken it up. But again, it's not the most natural, and it does degrade a lot of the color quality. Bringing it up a little bit looks pretty good. I like that, yeah. Alrighty, so I think that looks pretty good for the curves. Again, I don't want to do too much here, just kind of add a little bit of detail. You probably, again, won't notice unless if you turn all these off and turn it back on. It's ever so small with the detail. So let's go ahead and go back to color wheels and match. This is kind of where you can provide a overall kind of grade and overall kind of look. So let's say I wanted to make this look like the Matrix. We could bring down the shadows a little bit, definitely the mid-tones for sure. And now this looks like a scene out of the Matrix, I think. You got those greens in there. And so you can actually go a lot further with all this. It's really just all about playing with the settings, getting the right look down, making sure that it matches to exactly what you want in your standards. And again, at the end of the day, this is all just based on your opinion, what you like, your creativity. See how far you can get away with pushing the colors until the video breaks, and make a mental note of never to even go half that distance when adjusting for the color. A color that I do look pretty good in is red, based on my skin tones. Maybe let's go ahead and lift it up ever so slightly, just a little bit. So yeah, about there. All right, so because I leaned more red for the midtones, green for the shadows, with the highlights, I'm gonna try to go somewhere in the middle. Again, you can kind of base all of this on color theory, which is, can be a whole video in of itself. Complementary colors, there's a lot that you can dive into with color theory, how your video looks at the end of the day. But yeah, I think something like this looks adequate for YouTube, for film. Again, this is all stylization. You can also add some faded film to make it even look more like an actual movie. So yeah, that's a lot for me. So maybe let's cut it down to about 18. But yeah, I think this is an overall good look to stick with. If you guys have any suggestions on how I can improve this, or if you guys learned something, let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, I think this looks pretty good. Thank you guys so much for watching my video on color grading. If you guys want to watch some more filmmaking videos, be sure to click somewhere on the screen. The last one was all about how to use one light on set. If you guys want to see something a little bit more specific, leave a comment down below asking for how to do something, whether it's editing, camera work. Be sure to hit subscribe, turn on that notification bell for whenever I post next. My name's Austin, and yeah, I'm still terrible at ending these videos, even after a year and a half of doing this, so. Bye guys.